fun begins.
How's it going?
Hello.
Well, greetings, young Jedi. Hello there.
What is up, everyone? Hybrid Tour Reviews here with the final Black Series of Yesteryear, talking about the Blue Line. That's right, we have made it to Blue Line Wave 5, a wave that has 3 figures and no repacks, because back in the day, you used to get 4 figures per case, and you would either get 4 new figures or 3 new figures with a repack, or a couple of times 2 new figures with 2 repacks. But this time Hasbro said, hey, one of these guys is going to be desirable, and decided to double pack him, which was probably for the best. So that said, we're going to go ahead and just dive right in and start with Boushh Disguise, Princess Leia, as she appears in the beginning of Return of the Jedi. This figure definitely had some issues right off rip. So generally, the sculpt is nice. She suffers from the kind of poor facial likeness that we had in the line in the early days before photoreal technology really revolutionized things. This Princess Leia is very butterfaced, but she has a helmet, and with the helmet on, she looks rather nice. And with the helmet on, she probably looks like Boushh himself, a character that we never saw. She's wearing his armor. They sculpted her rather tall. Now, the Archive collection came along later on and gave her a better face sculpt and shortened the legs a little bit, which made it somewhat better. But overall, I wouldn't hate just seeing this costume get a head-to-toe overhaul, because there are a lot of dated things here. But she came with several good accessories. She came with that staff, she came with a backpack like those canisters, she had a helmet, and she had a thermal detonator! Yeah, she had the thermal detonator that she threatened Jabba with, it pegged onto the back of her belt, or she could carry it in her hand. And I gotta say, very small accessory. The Carpet Monster would love to claim that for an afternoon meal. But it was very well done, and in my opinion, essential for a character like this. She needs that thermal detonator. You know, she's threatening a crime lord. You know, she needs what she can get. The sculpting on this was rather good, albeit, again, there are those inaccuracies, the height mostly. But, you know, there's a lot of good going on here, too. She does look the part, for the most part. And is, all in all, a fairly decent figure, I do have to say. So, Boushh Leia, a pretty fine addition, but yeah, I'd like to see her redone. Following up that Boushh Leia, we have IG-88 jumping right off the screens from the Star Destroyer bridge in The Empire Strikes Back. The 2 waves before, we'd gotten Bosk, and then a couple weeks before that we'd gotten Boba Fett, so they were definitely on a run with these Empire Strikes Back bounty hunters. Surely they aren't going to stop and not make any more of them for like 4 years for no reason, right? IG-88 is a sculpt that has only just recently potentially been retired. They reused him later on for IG-11. He generally looks the part of an assassin droid, but the thing about an assassin droid is they are very lanky, very spindly. How do you pose a character like that? On screen, and I don't know this for sure, but my assumption is they basically just stuck a bunch of pipes and some hoses on him, and he was a statue on set, would be my assumption. It's just like, what do you do? And so Black Series articulated him as best they could, but over time he has showed his age. However, he's painted nicely, he has some subtle, color grading on him. They tried to hide the joints with these little silicone boots on the elbows and knees. However, over time, I have heard reports that those have started to degrade a little bit. Softer, rubbery, silicone plastics, do not stand the test of time historically. So if you have this guy, he might not be that pretty unless you've just had him standing straight arms and legs, and at that point I would advise you not to bend him now. But he is a generally good-looking figure, and for what he needed to be, he was okay. But we did recently get the IG-12 and Grogu, which the torso would not work for anything else, but there are new limbs with better articulation, and with that in mind, I would very much like to see this guy get redone at some point in the modern era. And bump him up just a little bit taller, too. Come on, Hasbro. From there, we get to our double-packed figure of the wave, and that is Clone Commander Cody. Now, I know I might have a friend named 212 Hunter, like this figure a lot. I was very happy to get the retro carded one in 2025 and get this one off the shelf. But this guy features all of the standard articulation of this older clone sculpt, which I have mentioned even back in the day didn't super impress me. My big thing was I had 375 Clone Wars figures that articulated better than the 6-inch, Black Series ones. And that frustrated me, But Commander Cody was done very well. He had a lot of subtle sculpted scratches in his armor, but they never quite came through with the wash to really enhance those. If this figure ever got given a wash, he really would pop. But he's got that limited clone articulation, but he does look really good and film accurate, which, was the goal. And there's just this guy is a lot of people's favorite clone. He got to be very expensive on the aftermarket. He was rocking like $100 for years until they archived him. And when they archived him, I commissioned a custom from Skywalker Hendrix, because at that point I was like, we're never getting a new one. And but I had to eat those words because they finally did give us the new one. So now I have an awesome custom and the awesome new one, and I don't even have this guy in the collection anymore. But he was hard to get. This entire wave was difficult to get, to be honest. IG-88, I honestly never had until they archived him. And then Bouche Leia, I got cheap a couple years after she came out. And the Commander Cody was like the only one from this wave that I had to have, and I had that day. So these are figures that I've all gotten to mess with since, but I didn't quite get the day of drop. They just not all of them were super speaking to me at the time. So that's kind of just where I fell on this wave. There was some neat stuff, but other than Cody, I just didn't super need the bounty hunters. So ultimately, they didn't end up on my shelf for a little while. But that is the end of the wave. However, I did promise we'll talk about one more figure. This figure was the only store exclusive figure that was a single pack of this era, and it really came out more around the time of Blue Line Wave 2, but you would find sightings throughout. And of course, I am talking about Prototype Boba Fett. Prototype Boba Fett is based on some concept art behind the scenes. They originally made the Boba Fett costume in white. He was meant to be like a super stormtrooper. And then later on, they were like, use that costume for a bounty hunter instead. Paint it green. And so the photos have been around for ages. They've been in behind the scenes books and stuff. And Hasbro decided, hey, let's take our Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, paint him white, or just cast him in white plastic, really. I don't think he had that much paint going on. And he became a Walgreens exclusive. Some Walgreens got special little end cap shippers. I never saw those, probably for the best, because otherwise I would have taken the shipper. But Prototype Boba Fett is that Boba Fett that we had in the line. His guns were black. The guns weren't entirely accurate. TVC had done the figure a couple years before as a mail away, and he more had like pistols with stocks on them than actual like the rifle and stuff. But this is a little bit of a cheap and easy and dirty Mandalore or Boba Fett recolor store exclusive, the kind of thing that makes for like a good store exclusive. I remember a lot of people were picking these up to use as it's like a blank canvas. They were painting custom Mandalorians on it. There was a run of them where they had gold text on like the forehead or the thigh or wherever, because they were actually like factory pieces that had gotten put in somehow. So there's like 1,000,001 different variants of this. And then since he was actually reissued in the Empire Strikes Back packaging as an Amazon exclusive back in like 2020 or so. So he isn't that expensive on the aftermarket anymore. He had gotten to be for a time, but Prototype Boba Fett, I just wanted to make this a nice 4-figure video, and since it was the last wave, this was the place to put him. And yeah, with that, and with Leia, IG-88, and Commander Cody, we are concluding our conversations about the Blue Line. The Blue Line, I'm going to be honest, had some bangers in it. I generally think the Blue Line was better than the Orange Line. I mean, and of course, it had another wave, had a lot of unique character selection, but What do you think? Who did better? The blue line, the orange line? Were you collecting when these came out? Have you picked up any of these since they came out or when they came out? So let's talk in the comments below. May the force be with each and every one of you, and I will see you next week when we start talking about the red and black line. Peace.